Let's talk about whether or not we are going to come out of lockdown or not in 20 days' time. I mean, if you haven't got that date circled in your diary 5,000 times, then frankly, what's wrong with you? Sir Iain Duncan Smith is a former leader of the Conservative Party and joins us now. Good morning to you, Sir Iain.
Morning.
It was almost like clockwork, wasn't it? That things are all looking good. We're heading out of lockdown. All the figures are looking great. We're down to, I mean, goodness me, even allowing for it being a bank holiday weekend. 0 deaths on Sunday were announced, and yesterday 1 death. I know those figures are likely to grow slightly just because of the variations in the days of the week of when we get announcements of deaths. But everything looking good. What a surprise! Almost like clockwork. We have more calls for us to slow down the pace of the lockdown easing because of concerns about a third wave. Should we listen to those concerns or should we ignore them?
Well, I suppose they have their legitimate concerns, but I must say that I found it really ridiculous. Today I've been listening to all sorts of different radio stations, listening to various scientists going on. There seems to be like an organised push by a group of scientists to stop June the 21st. It's been building for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. But it really looks to me very coordinated and quite deliberate. And the whole idea behind it is a whole hypothetical sense that somehow some people will not be able to have the vaccine take effect. And so these figures are calculated on the back of an envelope. And then we say, well, and there'll be some that where it doesn't quite work. And then those are calculated on the back of the envelope. And then, oh my God, that's 20 million people who will be very vulnerable and we will be overrun in the hospitals. And yet what we find practically is that whilst there are more infections, some people say it's because, of course, more testing, but nonetheless there are more infections because of this new variant. But what we do find is that the death rate is static, in fact falling. I think it was 1 the other day. And the numbers going into hospital is pretty flat, a slight uptick in 1 or 2 of these areas, but that may be due more to the fact that that they're reporting as a result of it into hospital. But nonetheless, there is no actual fact that says that we shouldn't unlock on the 21st. And we were always told that the most important feature of all of this is to protect the most vulnerable. And we have now double dosed pretty near 50% of the population. And that encompasses all the most vulnerable. The rest are either much younger or for one reason or another chose not to have the vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. We do appear to be constantly veering back towards this idea of a zero COVID approach or a close to zero COVID approach where any deaths at all or any hospitalizations at all have become completely politically and certainly for many on stage, morally unsustainable, unallowable. And yet we've never heard that about any other communicable disease. And with the vaccines, which do work. We know this. Just looking at places like Bolton, where those people who've been hospitalised, only 3% of those being hospitalised are people who've had a double dose of the vaccine. We know that it's having a clear and obvious effect on people's chances of getting the disease, getting hospitalised, or sadly dying. But we've got this rollout, we've got all the success from it. There seem to be a group of scientists who are absolutely determined not to reap the successes of the vaccine and determined to see every possible downside that they can, even though they don't see that in any other area. We talked to guests earlier in the show about people talk about a cautious approach. When people talk about caution, it's always about preventing another COVID death. It's never about preventing hundreds of thousands of people getting cancer treatment, all the social distancing, all those requirements that actually are having a knock-on effect on many younger people getting vital life-saving treatment. It's never about businesses going under, people losing their jobs. A lot of people have very much they think they're good people because they've got like a little blue heart on their Twitter avatar, or they've got a rainbow still inside in their window, and they've been terribly good staying at home in lockdown and ordering their Deliveroos and all of that. And they think they're terribly good moral people. And they're saying, well, I'm fine. Because, I'm fine. I'm happy with the freedoms we've got right now. A few more weeks. Let's be cautious. But they don't run businesses that are about to go under because the loans are being called in. They're not being without a job for the last year. It seems to me there are an awful lot of people who haven't got a clue how bad a lot of people have got it right now.
Well, actually, it's because we have a huge amount of people on a furlough scheme.
Yep.
And of course, that means that people, their attitude towards work and life is skewed at the moment very badly. But the furlough scheme is going to come to an end. It has to come to an end And one of the problems, if we don't get moving on June the 21st and we delay, and by the way, this is not for just another week or two. They talk about delaying right the way into September,
Yeah.
because they're scared stiff that there'll be a third autumn wave. And when you hear them talk, it's as though there hasn't been a single vaccine, but we've double dosed nearly 50% of the population. So we need to get some balance back into people's thinking at the moment, and we are very unbalanced, which is a very dangerous place to be. Not alone, by the way, many other countries in the world, particularly in the developed world, are completely unbalanced about this. All the other hospital treatments, they're struggling. Huge waiting lists now for elective surgery. Real problems with people not having had their issues over heart disease, liver disease, you name it. Many people have died that wouldn't have otherwise died because we locked down and because we shut the hospitals basically to all other ailments. So what we've got now is a bunch of scientists obsessed with one single issue, to the detriment of absolutely everything else. If the economy doesn't move, the poorest in society will suffer the most. They will be unable to navigate their way through because the furlough scheme will have to shut. We've got huge borrowings. All of these things have got to be brought into play. We are okay to open on the 21st. There are going to be new variants for the rest of our lives and beyond. Flu has a new variant or two every year. This is the ridiculous notion that somehow we go to zero COVID and we are okay for the rest of our lives. That will not happen. Now we have to figure out how best to get through all of that. But we have the vaccines, and they're going to be updated, they're going to be upgraded, and they work. They do work. Even the single dose reduces dramatically the effect of COVID and on anyone who's had it, and a double dose reduces it so significantly you have about a 4 or 5% chance of catching it. If you do, it'll be a much reduced version.
Indeed. So Iain, exactly. There's all the success. Can I just ask you very briefly, Boris Johnson, secret wedding to Carrie Simons, his fiancée, at the weekend. Did you get an invite?
No, I don't think anyone got an invite except for families. I wouldn't expect to have an invitation anyway. I mean, I always thought it would be a fairly private affair. And I must say, I take my hat off to him for making no fuss at all about it, not having Hello magazine perched on their shoulder, and just going out and getting married. I'm a great believer that marriage is hugely important in society, and I like the idea that he's gone and done it without a fuss or a bother. And now they're as happy as Larry, as far as I can make out.
Sir Iain Duncan Smith, thank you very much indeed. Very much appreciate that.